Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Kellam, and you're looking at a screen full of hosts, I would imagine, or you will be eventually. This is our annual that we do 3 times a year gathering of the gathering of the 4 hosts for the Encounter program. This is just a chat among us about what the churches are like in COVID times. And so we have Rachel Helgeson, who's the pastor of the Northminster Methodist, Northminster
Presbyterian. You're Presbyterian
Church,
too.
the Presbyterian Church in Endwell. Mark Kimpland is the pastor of the Endwell United Methodist Church, and Joe Sellepack is the executive director of the Broome County Council of Churches. I serve as the parish associate at another church, the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. And I should explain that the parish associate, I'm retired, and so I have no official paid function. I just want that title at the bottom of the screen whenever I'm on TV. So the talking about the church in COVID times, a couple of weeks ago, I talked with the pastor at the Our Lady of Good Counsel Church about how the Catholics were coping in COVID. And so let's talk today about some of the Protestants and what we're doing with worship, with mission, with service, and so on. Rachel, you want to tell us how your church is making out?
Sure. So when the pandemic started officially in March, we shut everything down along with a number of churches. So meaning that the physical building was shut down. But we had to quickly learn how to go online from my home. So this became the format from my house. So the space actually quickly became my studio for worship and all sorts of things that I didn't realize that I would need to learn. And I'm very grateful that I've been an Encounter program host because I learned some skills along the way, but I had to learn some more. So every Sunday morning we were doing worship at 10 o'clock from my house. And eventually we started to add more things like adding liturgists to the worship service once I figured out how to use that. Quickly learning how to get, eventually the Presbyterian Church allowed for communion to be online, recognizing that people were really hungry for communion, and so expanding the language and theology around that, which was the first time we did that, I was a little bit.
It's odd, isn't it?
It was odd. Yeah, I was like, are we really allowed to do this? And I thought about, it was like, so great, the denomination said so, but before this, we had questions about that sort of thing. And I know I've had conversations with folks from other denominations, some who went earlier and just started doing that earlier, and others who still said no way. And even within our own denomination, there is one theologian who said that they're just taking a communion fast right now, period. So
a fast from communion, yeah.
Yeah. We eventually decided to open the doors of Northminster, but it was at a very restrictive, conservative way of doing it. We did a lot of research about what can you do with music? Well, right now you can't sing. So and I know some churches are doing that, but there's been research particularly around how droplets from singing can be about 20 feet out and can stay there for about half an hour afterwards. As someone who is a singer, this has been probably one of the hardest things for me personally.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it just has been. So I know that people have all sorts of feelings about that, and I want to acknowledge that. But I have had my own grief over this particular part of it, which when I was doing it from home, I could sing or we could have hymns, but being in a group of people, we just need to be careful to make sure that folks are safe. And that's what my congregation has decided. We spaced people out, closed some of the pews out, took the front pew out so I could preach without my mask, but that means that I'm much further away from my congregation. We have people sign in and out. I mean, there's so many things that other people made sure to think about. And we have people register to come in, but we save extra spaces for folks who might wander into worship. So we're trying to do that as well. It's been interesting, though. We initially started with 2 worship services, and I think once folks realize that it's not going to be the same as it was pre-pandemic, that which we did try to prep them about. We made a video, and it was funny and cute and also informative, but it's still not the same until you walk in and you actually realize that it's different.
Right.
So we've been having about 30 folks who've been coming on and off to worship, and everybody else has been, we've continued to do our online presence on Facebook Live, and which can stay there on our Facebook page, and also on Zoom, which we do for our folks who just need to use their phone. They don't have access to, for those of you who use the radio, that probably makes a lot of sense to be able to just get on your phone and be able to connect with your church friends. And that's the thing we've noticed the most, is that people are just really hungering, whether they're super busy or really isolated, to just somehow connect with folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's center on worship then, and move to the other 2 hosts, because a lot of folks don't realize probably that Joe Sellepack is also a part-time pastor at a local congregation. Joe, what's it like for your church these days in worship?
Well, it's interesting because it's a very small, very rural church, and most of our people don't actually have access to a computer, so, or Wi-Fi or the internet. So it's one of those things where, because I am of the generation where everybody has a computer and everybody has access to a cell phone.
Yeah.
Or data or any number of other things. It's like being thrown back in time. We tried through the early pandemic. What I was doing was sending a bulletin for everybody to do separate. They were all doing their own worship. It was like around their coffee table with their family. They were going through a worship service that way, where I put together, I put hymns into it, where they would read the hymns responsively, and they would all, and you're talking about communion, we went to kind of like, they blessed their own, because we believe in the priesthood of all believers. And we, and I, and I'm significant, and I'm not a Presbyterian, I am sort of a Methodist. So it kind of works out for us, because we use this term called love feast, where
Yes.
where it becomes more of a celebration of Christ's presence in our midst when we gather. And when 2 or 3 are gathered, or even if you're gathering by yourself and praying, Christ is there. So we believe, that within that there's a level of receptivity that doesn't, that God's grace transcends the barriers that we like to put in place there. So I'm, as far as our little church is concerned, we fall way below the 50% mark or 25% mark or whatever that kind of goes in there. We do wear masks when we come into church now, and we try to remain socially distant. And the singing thing, we do try not to. They have to use people. They're using like their stuff as PPP, and they're singing, into something, like that. It's kind of a weird thing. But we've, and again, we have a sanctuary that can fit probably 100 people, 125, and we have maybe 10 or 15 in the entire sanctuary. So it's not like we clean, we have hand sanitizer, we do all the right things in order to make it work. But one of the things that I've been finding, is that with the politicization of the COVID virus, like you have, especially in a rural area, you have a number of people who are incredibly, suspect about media and other kinds of things. And so you have people who don't want to wear masks, who view it as being a big problem. You also have, on the other side of it, you have people who are, incredibly affirming the disease and needing to, and even in a small congregation like mine, we're finding that it's kind of like even though we're coming together and we're worshiping, it's kind of drawing out the differences that exist in the political environment. And I don't like to play politics. It's part of the role of being a minister to both sides inside of a church. You don't usually bring that up as a thing, but the more that I read about this disease and the prevalence of it and how it gets transmitted, the more worried I become about my people. And I find myself having to tell them again and again and again, even though they're not exposed on a daily basis to this. My wife is. She's a teacher. I'm out in the community and I'm meeting with people. And I have to come into this congregation and you have to be exposed to this. So if nothing else, do it for me.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Just do it for me, because I don't want to have to hurt. I don't want the responsibility of having hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And they've taken that to be a pretty decent way of approaching it. So
I like that too. So Mark, now we move to the Endwell United Methodist Church, and we're talking about worship. Are you online as well as gathering live in the sanctuary?
Yes, we are both. It's amazing what a pandemic and crisis will do to a congregation. March 15th, we were together. March 22nd, we were not. And it talked about the idea of a live feed at council meetings. It's a really nice idea, really, really nice thing maybe we should do. And we've talked about it for years. And within a week's time, our hand was forced and we had to do it. And my hat goes off to the folks that are on the tech team. Every week they're making changements and adjustments and improvements and such. And so the game plan is we will remain online with a live stream until Christ comes. And that's wonderful. That is fantastic. We did open up our sanctuary, I think, like Rachel and Joe, the beginning part of August. We kind of just opened it up and such things, and now people are met at the door with a thermometer, and they sign in, and they're asked how they're feeling. They come into a socially distanced, roped off sanctuary, which is very, very different, and it's just totally just not what they're used to, but it does attract folks that do want to come together. We have a capacity, probably, if we're socially distanced, of about 90 people. We are averaging about 30 on a Sunday right now, and I don't see that needle moving a whole lot going into the school year and such things. But we have 80, 90 or so that join us every Sunday online and with Facebook. Thank God for Facebook and YouTube and Zoom. Those recordings are there, and hundreds after following the week and such things can tune in. So it's totally a different experience. I did want to make a comment when it deals with worship with communion. We have done it twice as a congregation when we have opened up the sanctuary. And it's just so very, very different. We've been using the the small containers, plastic containers, and such things. And it's almost like when you get done consecrating the elements, you hear these things click.
What I grew up with.
The pop
I don't
tops.
practice it anymore, but yeah, that's what I grew up with.
And so we got really fancy this last week. We bought the self-contained things through Cokesbury, which no one could open. They open it, and they couldn't find the bread or the wafer and such things. So we're gonna have to go to Plan D, I think, on that one.
It certainly takes away from the mysticism of the meal, doesn't it?
Well, the mystery is how do you get into it? Yeah.
Well,
so Jeff, let me ask you a question. Your church went ahead and brought in somebody who's now a media minister.
He was already a part of the congregation. He is a child of the church and runs. He's a wedding DJ, among other things, and so he had all these skills. So we asked him to help us do an online service because our church is still shut up tight. We have a couple of health professionals on our session who have said, let's just err on the side of caution. We love one another. We don't want to infect one another. So the church is locked up. The codes on the door have changed. We're opening very slowly, but still not for worship. On Sunday, the 13th, which if we air this weekend, would be a gathering in the Riverside Cemetery, our first live face-to-face thing, limited to 50 people. But to go back to the electronic part, we asked Ryan DeLapp to help us with putting this together, a worship service online. Well, it takes hours and hours and hours, and we realized we're taking a lot of this guy's time. So we did offer him a stipend to help us, and so he's kind of he's our media specialist on staff. And the program on Sunday morning is usually finished. I think they record each individual piece in people's homes, and Ryan takes the whole thing and puts it all together, and it's quite a production. But it's once again, it's people's homes, so everybody's individually and melded together electronically. So it's quite a production, and it looks good. And I think we'll continue to do it in some way. But once we get back into the sanctuary, Ryan won't have all these individual pieces. I think we'll be doing it from the sanctuary and be a lot easier to I know editing and I know what goes into this thing. And then we have closed captioning. We tried it automatically, and the closed captioning app doesn't quite understand theology, and so we were getting some embarrassing words on the screen. So now we have to submit a script. It's when I did the worship service a few weeks ago, I did the children's time, and he wanted me to script the children's time, and I said, I've never scripted the children's thing in my life. But we do what we have to do, and I think that's kind of what we're talking about now. Our guest today, just to summarize, are Joe Sellepack, the executive director of the Broome County Council of Churches. Mark Kimpland is the pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church, and at Northminster Presbyterian Church, the Reverend Rachel Helgeson. So we've talked about worship. Let's talk a little bit about how outreach and mission continue, and anybody can jump in here. We're not closed in that area.
Right. For our congregation at Northminster, that actually continued in all sorts of ways. We decided to keep our chow pantry open with very strict rules, but we were concerned about people being able to be fed and cared for. That was something that we felt. We knew that Broome County Council of Churches was getting more requests, and we're really concerned about that. One of the things that was hard, though, to make some decisions was that we told Al-Anon that they were allowed to continue to meet at our space because we felt like there would be a need, but they decided to go online for a while, but they came back sooner than some of our other groups because there has been a rise in addiction, and it's been particularly a lot of mental health issues for folks during the pandemic. And so Al-Anon did decide to come back, but with strict ways of doing that. And they've been a great group, by the way. Like when we have July 4th, they're the ones that clean up and stuff for us. So we've been really grateful for them. The Boy Scouts decided to follow what the school was doing. And so they haven't met in person. We did an Eagle Scout thing, but it was on Zoom. It was great to see everybody, but also really very different to have an Eagle Scout honor on Zoom that way. So I was honestly able to tell that particular young man that this is my first time doing the Eagle Scout honor, and it's my first time doing it on Zoom, so I may as well just make it special for you.
Right.
So I know that other folks in your churches, Mark, did you guys continue to do things over at the Methodist Church?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we found it multiplied. Everything just increased to maybe threefold. Our Monday night dinners went from about 70 people a week to now over 200 to 240 people a week.
Wow.
And started even a delivery type of thing, also delivering meals to some of the people that can't get out. Our fellowship hall that was always wonderfully set up for gatherings now is a hub for the Elmira Food Bank. And so it's a warehouse. So we really had to look at how we were using space and such things, and just so many more opportunities came our way because, as Rachel said, the need just multiplied many times. And so, we've always used the terminology of relaunching worship, because like all of us, we never really closed. That things stepped forward even in the midst of the pandemic, which was quite a thing to see, to get people mobilized to react to what was going on in our community.
Yeah, food insecurity is up, went from 12.6% to 17.7% of total population in Broome County. Now, 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but if you were to look at that, it would be what would go into twice the arena is what we're talking about. The arena seats about 5,000 people. So we're talking 10,000 extra people are food insecure right now. Because of the virus and because of the economic impact of the virus on our place. So all of the work that you all are doing is necessary, more so now than ever. And even in rural areas, like our church has been very much a part of this kind of stuff. I mean, we've done drive-throughs at the church where we've just taken little bags and put it in people's trunks as they go by, with school supplies as well as with food and that kind of thing. We've been trying to make sure that this kind of this environment of that, even though we have to be socially distanced, we maintain that we are together in love and in care. And even though we can't see each other's faces, there's always a warmth there. You have some way of sharing the love and the care of God in the midst of all of the stuff that we're going through. And this is part of what makes me very proud of the work at the Council of Churches, especially. We've been doing actually 4 or 5 times above what we normally do because of the effects of the virus as well. So yeah,
I interviewed Les Aylesworth yesterday here on my porch for a future program. And we talked about how the work of Chow, and we talked about the Chow Walk that's coming up too. And I'll just throw in a plug for that. We have about 3 minutes left, but the Chow Walk will be virtual this year. And so you do a quarter-mile walk. You can get a team together. It's anytime between October 1st and October 6th. And you make the pledges as you would have before, but we just won't be a physical gathering. And it also means that people who've not been able to free up the day or free up find the venue can do it at your leisure. And so I think there'll be more people this time participating in the Chow Walk.
Well, we're
Our
really hoping
churches,
so.
yeah, our church's food pantry continues to be open as well. And I think that's, the Chow food pantries are doing a tremendous job in meeting that food insecurity issue. Um, and I was interested too in that it's a quarter-mile walk. 1/4 mile was, as you could walk around your house a few times and do that. But it's because 1 in 4 children in Broome County faces food insecurity. I mean, what a tremendous burden this is for us to continue to meet.
Well, and that's been part of the problem, is that schools have been out, and that's one of the places where a lot of people get food from. And with school out, then you end up with a lot of people not having access to food over a course of time.
Yes.
So, and we're dealing with now well over 9 months, 6 months, 9 months, or whatever we're at now. We're a long time out. It's
what
put a
day
strain
is it?
on everybody.
Right. So we have about maybe a minute left. Anybody have one quick closing thought before I say your names again and we move on?
I did want to say one thing, is that as school begins to remember the children and the families and the teachers and administrators that are dealing with it, I know that our churches are full of these folks in one way or the other, and to keep them in your prayers, because everyone's had to make hard decisions. And as we heard Joe say about food insecurity, it leads us to a lot of other things like mental health, people getting afraid, anger, losing jobs. So we just, if you're thinking about this and wondering about it, think about the children. That's always the way to start, and then go from there. So
Thank you, Rachel.
Mark, I'll give you a benediction. What do you want to do for benediction quickly?
No, I absolutely thank you, Rachel, for sharing that, because there are people that have made some very, very difficult decisions, and that they need our love, and to reach out and just find out who's struggling.
And I'll just say what Jeff always says: be good and gentle to each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, our guest today on Encounter has been Joe Sellepack, the Executive Director of the Broome County Council of Churches, and Mark Kimpland, who's the pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church, and Rachel Helgeson at Northminster Presbyterian Church. And I'm Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. As Joe says, be well, and then be gentle with people and with yourself.